Hey, what's up guys? Harry here, and today I'm going to be talking about the Uber Xchange Leasing program versus Lyft Express Drive program. Now, these are both respectively each company's flagship program, right? Uber has spent a lot of time and dedicated a lot of money and resources into building up their Uber Exchange leasing program, and Lyft similarly has done the same thing with Lyft Express Drive. Now, there are a few other rental and leasing options, but these are the two biggest ones, so I sort of want to focus on that today. And just to give you a quick overview, Exchange is really Uber's leasing program where they basically partner with dealerships all around the country to offer rideshare vehicles to drivers. So in the past, they actually just provided the financing, but now they're actually starting to open up some of their own showrooms and do sort of a whole full service model. Lyft's Express Drive rental program is more of a weekly rental, sort of as the name might suggest, and they partner to provide you with GM or Hertz vehicles for a weekly rental fee. So there's some similarities, but there are a lot of differences, and these programs really are designed for full-time drivers, right? You got to drive a lot. These programs will get into the costs and everything, but they are expensive, and if you're just looking to do this part-time, these two programs probably aren't the best option, and there are others we have on our Uber vehicle marketplace, which you can take a look at, but not a great fit if you're part-time. And if you are full-time or looking to do full-time, we'll go dive into the details. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the pricing, right? Obviously the most important. How much do these cars cost? And the answer is kind of a lot. So that's one criticism of these programs, is that they're expensive. But I will say that from a design perspective, they are designed very well for drivers. Usually Exchange is around $120 to $180 a week, but you also need to add rideshare insurance, which can be anywhere from $50 to $200 a month. So it's expensive, right? You add all that up, you're at what, $480 for the lease, all the way up to maybe $600, all the way up to $1,000, depending on which car, which make and model, and how much your insurance is. So it's obviously a lot more than a regular lease, but at the same time, it's not the same as a regular lease. You get unlimited mileage, and we'll talk about some of the details too. But as far as pricing, that's how much it's going to cost. You do get that unlimited mileage and free maintenance, so it is pretty different than a traditional lease. Now, Lyft Express Drive, the pricing actually depends on the city and whether you go with the GM or Hertz option. Looking at the prices here in Los Angeles, it's currently $170 a week for a Lyft Express Drive car with Hertz. If you do 70 rides a week, though, for example, you actually get the rental for free. You just have to pay the tax. So that's sort of the high-level overview. There are a couple other important things on the pricing with that. You don't qualify for Power Driver bonus with Lyft if you're using the Express Drive program, so that's something to consider. And the big thing that we've seen with Lyft's Express Drive program is that terms and prices are super different from month to month, even in the same city, and especially city to city. There might be the rides requirement might be 70 on Hertz and a different number on GM, or it might be 75 in a different city, and then that might change to 85. So just make sure that you read all the fine print and really do all your research, all your due diligence, okay? So when we talk about, the next thing I want to talk about is flexibility. Now, the Express Drive program is clearly the more flexible option since they allow for those weekly rentals, but you do have to return the car from time to time since technically it is a rental. With Uber, since it's a leasing program, you actually keep the car as long as you make payments. So the minimum term with Uber, you have to keep the car for at least a month, and in order to get out of the lease, you have to pay a $250 fee and basically 2 weeks notice. So when you add that month plus the 2 weeks notice, the minimum term is 1.5, so basically 1.5 months, right? Which is pretty reasonable. I mean, if you're going to try this out, you want to give it a good shot and at least do it for a month or two, I would say anyway. So minimum term is a month and a half, which I think is very reasonable. Now, when it comes to flexibility of payments, it is a hassle with Uber if you don't drive, because they still need to take those weekly payments, out anyways. And so you will run into some problems there. There are a few different options. We'll leave a link to Uber Exchange support, a few different options for payment, but I have heard that it's kind of a hassle because it's not just, you have to pay a little money if you want to do credit card. They can't, if you don't have Uber earnings, they normally take it out of your Uber earnings. And if you don't have Uber earnings, it just brings a little bit of a hassle. The other thing to keep in mind too on the topic of pay is that both of these programs are not eligible for Ubers. So with Uber, you can't do instant pay, which allows you to cash out daily. or instantly. And with Lyft Express Drive, you also can't do their Express Pay. So you can try a third-party service, maybe one like Active Hours, or there are a few others, and I'll leave a link to that in the show notes, but that may not work obviously as well, or it might not be as convenient as some of these instant services that the companies offer themselves directly. So that's definitely one thing to consider. Now, when it comes to availability of cars, this is one area where I've seen issues on both programs since they've been so popular, right? Exchange has been extremely popular. We have a few articles on the blog about Exchange, and they've been in our top 10 for the past year or two. Basically, cars are in short demand for these programs. One of the biggest complaints I've heard about Lyft Express Drive program, period, is that there aren't enough cars. I haven't heard this program as much with Uber Exchange, so you may find that there's better availability for yourself in your situation with Uber Exchange Leasing. Uber has a bunch of dealerships that they partner with. They're starting to open up their own showroom, so it seems like they're investing heavily there. Not to say that Lyft isn't, because they're also expanding, but just definitely keep that in mind. Now, when it comes to maintenance, both services or both options provide free maintenance. Like I said, with Lyft, you do have to sometimes switch out that car, which can be a little bit of a hassle. With Uber Exchange, you basically keep the car as long as you're making payments. You'll get that basic, oil changes and things like that done either at the dealership or one of their partners. So the other thing I want to talk about, customer service. So I haven't heard a lot of negative feedback about Lyft other than there just not being that many cars, but with the Express Drive program, but it's also a much newer program, so maybe we just need to give it some time. And obviously Uber is a much bigger company, so they're probably doing more volume. And I will say I've heard all sorts of experiences with Uber Exchange. I wouldn't say that most of them are negative, but there are definitely some pretty big challenges that have come up. And really what it boils down to is that if you kind of get lucky or you go through the exchange process and everything is smooth and you don't need to work with them or contact them or nothing out of the ordinary happens, you're probably gonna have a great experience. But when those issues come up on exchange, maybe a document wasn't filed right or something like that, drivers have told me it's very hard to get that resolved. Uber does have a few options for support. We'll leave for specifically for Exchange Leasing. They have an email, support@exchangeleasing.com. And remember, it's X, so it's XCHANGE, leasing.com. And we'll also leave a link where you can actually contact them either through that email, or if you have payment issues, they have a phone number you can call. So they do have some options, but it's a little bit hard to find. So we'll leave that in the show notes so you can get some more info. And then the last thing that I want to mention really is just doing multiple services. Because with Lyft's Express Drive program, right, as you guys know, I'm big on driving for multiple services, right? Leveraging different opportunities to increase your income. With Lyft's Express Drive program, though, you can only drive for Lyft. With Uber's program, since your name is on the insurance card, you can actually go drive for Lyft if you wanted. In fact, you could only do Lyft, but then you'd have to, figure out a way to pay them every single week. So it just gives you a little bit more flexibility there. And that's why I think if I had to pick one, I'd probably go for that Exchange Leasing since, it gives you that flexibility to do Uber and Lyft. I'm not the type of person that needs like week-to-week flexibility. So that month and a half sort of holding period with Uber Exchange, I think is pretty reasonable. And then, hey, if I decide it's not working for me or if I want to give up the car, 2-week notice, plus the $250 fee, I think is very reasonable. You aren't going to lose money, or I should say, if you're working full time, it's very difficult to lose money with these programs. You may end up seeing though that they are expensive, and so you do, there's a big incentive to drive as much as you can, to work as many hours as possible, especially when you think about the fact that there's that unlimited mileage. So that's sort of a high-level overview of the Uber Exchange Leasing program versus Express Drive. I'd love to know your feedback. Let me know, what did you like about Uber? What do you like about Uber Exchange's program? What don't you like? And same thing with Lyft Express Drive. Now, I know a lot of people will probably say they're expensive, but remember, when you compare them to a regular lease or traditional financing options, a lot of drivers who are going for these programs may not be able to get financing on their own, or they may not have the funds to buy a car or a used car or anything like that. So I think it's definitely a smart option if your options are making $0 a week, or going with Uber Exchange or Lyft Express Drive and making at least some money a week. So if you enjoyed this video, feel free to give us a thumbs up, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. We'd love to hear from you. We release new videos every single week. So if you have any topics that you want to hear, don't hesitate to reach out. All right, take care.